Welcome to footballgameplan.com where football makes sense. I'm Emory Hunt sitting here with the man Tyler Merkovich, and this is the 2009 Washington Redskins team preview. Now, a lot of movement in DC this year. They made the big defensive signing with Albert Haynesworth. How does that team look on offense this year in Washington?
Well, huge contract for Albert Haynesworth, but let's talk about their offense. Jim Zorn, offensive guy. He was a gambler last year, 10 for 16 on fourth down conversions, but you know Daniel Snyder, one of the most impatient owners in the league. Zorn's on the hot seat because of this, and their offense needs to get going. Jason Campbell, there was rumors that let's trade this guy. We like Mark Sanchez, this and that. But I think Campbell, he's got a lot of motivation. But when it comes to Jim Zorn, I think there's too much heat to handle in Washington right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because you have a guy in Campbell is probably on his eighth different offense in so many years, but at least he gets Zorn back, for 2 consecutive seasons. So you should see the best out that quarterback position.
Absolutely, and they're going to need to rely on the running game, of course. One of the most underrated backs in football, it's Clinton Portis. This guy's got big hands. He catches the ball out of the backfield. Got great vision. One of the best running backs in the NFL. This is a big, big player for Washington.
How's that offensive line looking? Vastly, they were inconsistent last season. How's that offensive line look to improve this season in Washington?
Well, we got Chris Samuels. He's their left tackle. I think it's a little suspect, aging a little bit. Derek Dockery, Randy Thomas. This is not a fine point of Washington, and Clinton Portis is running behind it. He still makes plays. So, Clinton Portis offsets the lack of stability on the offensive line.
All right, and the receivers, a little inconsistent group. They did draft 2 guys last year, in Devin Thomas and Malcolm Kelly out of Oklahoma. So how does that receiving core with Santana Moss and Cooley, how did they get better to help out Jason Campbell?
They try to go to those big receivers to with those small guys they had in Moss and Randall L. Moss is a playmaker; he can make it happen. Devin Thomas, he's a big receiver. Malcolm Kelly also. Antoine Randall L is aging a little bit. They got to use Cooley in the game. I think their pass game will be okay because they got pretty decent weapons. Mark Sellers out of the backfield, he could catch it. Liddell Betts is a backup, and of course Portis could catch it. So I think Campbell, if he starts taking shots down the field, gets a little more aggressive, and Zorn opens it up for him, he's got a lot to prove this year, and I think he's going to have a pretty decent year.
And with the signing of Albert Haynesworth, they went to make a move to improve their defense. Redskins stunk last year as far as stopping the run. How does the addition of Haynesworth improve that run defense?
Not only they got Haynesworth, he's got his money now, and Tennessee was smart. They gave him a 1-year deal with incentives. Mm-hmm. He had a reason to play. He's got his money. I think he's still going to be a force. He's one of the best tackles in the league, regardless of that. But Brian Orakpo, they bring in. They were 28th in sacks. So they bring in Orakpo. They need to get a rush on the quarterback, and this is a defensive division, so this is why they went after this guy. Phillip Daniels also on the defensive end, and Cornelius Griffin at D tackle. I think it's okay.
And what about the back three? It's one of the more no-name groups they have, aside from Mr. .com himself, London Fletcher. How do you see that linebacking core this year?
Rocky McIntosh is up and coming. HB Blades, underrated bunch. I think they'll be stout.
You like look for London Fletcher, vastly underrated guy. If you look at his career, he can make a case for the Hall of Fame. All he does is make 100 tackles a year. He's always on an impact play. He makes them in the passing game. I think he'll do fine. I agree with you. I think they'll be just fine with the back three, but it all depends on that front four. In the secondary, last year they did well. The first year without, Sean Taylor, but they held up pretty well. How do you see that secondary? They lose Sean Springs this year, so what improvements did they make to subset the loss?
Well, they got the talent back there. The total defense is ranked 4th, so overall it's pretty solid. And they lose Sean Taylor, of course, in that tragedy. But Chris Horton, they found out of UCLA. This guy, he's going to start. He's good. He takes Reed Dowdy's spot away. Dowdy's now a backup. LaRon Landry, he's solid. And on their corners, they got Carlos Rogers, of course. D'Angelo Hall takes a big game. He needs to step up. He has something to prove also on the defensive side of the ball. And they got Fred Smoot as a nickel. So this team's got this the defensive secondary's got the talent. They need to step up and show it, and they need to make plays.
Special teams in Washington, you have kickoff return, punt return. is mostly handled by Santana Moss. How do you see that special teams holding up this year? Who's their kicker out there in Washington?
It was atrocious. It can't get any worse than last year. Sean Swisham, 10 missed field goals last year. They need to improve on that. I think Swisham could get better. And they had 0 punt returns for TDs, and they gave up 2 punt returns for touchdowns. When they put Rock Cartwright back there, I'm not sure what they're doing. I guess they're just going for field position. And Randall L. is aging. Mm-hmm. So, this unit can't get any worse. So they need to improve in this area because they need to be solid in all 3 facets, especially a big division, which is into defense. Big defensive division, the NFC East.
Speaking of that big, tough division, NFC East, how do you see the Washington Redskins faring this year? Last year, they were okay, then they fell off, but with the improvements they made on defense and on offense, can they make a push for the division title?
They may surprise teams. They got to be defensive-minded. Zorn, he could get things going. If Campbell plays well, I think they can make a move, but this division is just too tough. Not enough offense, not enough consistency. Zorn on the hot seat, impatient owner. I think the Redskins will battle Dallas for the 3rd spot. In the end, they become last in the NFC East. That's the best division in football, though.
If they become last, a lot of changes will be down there in the nation's capital. That's a look at the Washington Redskins team preview for 2009. I'm Emery Hunt with Tyler Merkovich. To check out more team previews, go to our website, footballgameplan.com/NFL.